Did a court decision just alter the outcome of a French presidential election that's now less than 300 days away? Upheld on appeal Marine Le Pen's conviction for funneling EU parliamentary staff funds to her far-right National Rally Party. Watered down by half her 30 months of ineligibility to run for public office. That makes it now possible for her to launch a fourth bid for the French presidency. There is a catch, however. The 57-year-old Le Pen has to wear an electronic bracelet till July of next year. Will she break the promise she made just last week not to hit the campaign trail with an ankle that goes beep? Her answer to come in a primetime television interview. Either way, what role for Le Pen's understudy, 30-year-old Jordan Bardella, dismissed by critics as her puppet, lauded by supporters as the face of renewal for a far-right that's been a family-run enterprise ever since the days of the late patriarch Jean-Marie Le Pen. Does the name of the candidate next April make a difference to voters more broadly? Why is France's far-right more popular than it's ever been in living memory? After the term-limited Emmanuel Macron, will the French really elect a leader who's expressed admiration for Donald Trump and whose party has previously financed campaigns thanks to Vladimir Putin? Would Europe come apart? We'll look at a France that's divided, currently between radical right, hard left, and a splintered center. 3 blocks, but remember, only the top 2 candidates can qualify for the presidential runoff. We'll look at the field and do the math. Today in the France 24 debate, is there no stopping Marine Le Pen now? With us, she was in the courtroom for the... These are live pictures we're seeing. She was in the courtroom earlier in the company of Shirley Sitbon, here present. And there you see Marine Le Pen making her way from her party headquarters to that television interview. Shirley will be getting your thoughts on that. We'll also be speaking with Shannon Seban, National Secretary of the Conservative Les Républicains Party. Thanks for being with us. From London, his new book is Far Right France, Le Pen, Bardella and the Future of Europe. Victor Mallet, Financial Times World Desk Senior Editor. Good to see you.
Good evening.
And from Dole in the eastern Jura mountains of France, hopefully far from the heat that's hitting the rest of the country, Yves Saint-Omer, Professor of Political Science at Paris 8 University. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now, we had circled the date on the calendar and repeatedly reached out to the National Rally to join the conversation without success. You can, however, on the hashtag F24debate. So the headline, she can run. The sub-headline, there are terms and conditions. Shirley Sitbon, tell us more.
Yes, so I must say that we did do the math in court today, as you were saying, because many things were to take into consideration. Of course, Marine Le Pen, in order to run, she had to be eligible, obviously, and she said she wouldn't run with an electronic tag. So we had to calculate, because they gave us the figures, the presiding judge, 45 months of ineligibility, minus 30, that's 15, and that started last year in March 31, the 31st of March. So we had to do the math, and then everyone looked at each other saying, well, then she's eligible now. So yes, she is. But then there's the electronic bracelet. And there's a question there, too, because as you said, she has 1 year officially. But then we talked to the lawyer of the European Parliament, and he said, well, she can still negotiate this because, as you know, that in France, we have the sentencing, and then you have another judge, the sentencing judge, who then can negotiate with the people who were convicted. And Patrick Maisonneuve, who represents the European Parliament, says that she can negotiate maybe half. Maybe she can do 6 months if she negotiates well. So, yeah, I think that's something they're going to work on now.
They never get negotiated upwards, those reduced sentences,
yes,
do they?
And perhaps that's why, if you want to listen to the lawyer of Marine Le Pen, if you want to do it now, that's why he was not as displeased as we could think when we heard the conviction. Let's listen to him.
Now we will reflect on the verdict as a whole this afternoon, and will issue an internal memo on any follow-up action to be taken in response. Thank you.
Are you satisfied with the verdict?
Partially, yes. It's a good start.
It's a good start. Sort of a Cheshire cat grin there from her attorney. Let's cross now to France 24's Luc Schrago. Luc, we showed the image just minutes ago. Marine Le Pen making her way from where you are outside National Rally headquarters to the television station TF1, where she'll be giving that primetime interview. And the smile we saw on that lawyer's face, is that kind of what you've seen from the people going in and out the building behind you?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, you've had more reaction over there in the newsroom than we have down here at party headquarters. People playing their cards very close to their chest. Jordan Bardella showing up earlier in the afternoon, arriving from Strasbourg for a special meeting, obviously a strategy meeting with senior party advisors. Marine Le Pen as well showing up after her verdict in her case. No one saying anything, obviously very much waiting for her to hit primetime news and tell the French people exactly what she's going to be doing.
And at this point in time, it was sort of this huddle over whether will she or won't she run. So if you're not able to ask the members of the National Rally who are disciplined and not speaking to reporters like yourself, all you could do is ask other journalists. What's the thought? What's the thought there?
Well, what we really have to do is look at the way that the National Rally has been arranging things over the last months, how they have been positioning people like Jordan Bardella as a potential person to take the banner from Marine Le Pen in terms of running for president. Now, we've seen him being positioned as her number two. Obviously, their plan A could still possibly happen. We don't yet know. We'll know that more in another hour or so if she actually decides to run. With her running for president, he would obviously be her number two in as the prime minister. Now, what we have to see is whether or not she's going to do it and whether or not it's going to be Jordan Bardella. If it is going to be Jordan Bardella, he's been positioning himself in the last several months as able to take over the party. Now, what he lacks is the gravitas, the cachet, the wealth of experience that Marine Le Pen brings to the National Rally on the political scene. Now, she's made the National Rally a huge force in French politics. It's the most numerous, it's got the most number of seats in the French Parliament. She has done that work, bringing it in from the political fringes over the last 10 to 15 years. Now, if it's going to be Jordan Bardella, his work is going to be to reach out elsewhere on the political spectrum to bring in the kind of support that they're going to need to maintain those numbers and indeed push forward if they want to take the presidency. Now, it's not necessarily going to be an easy case. Marine Le Pen's experience, if she doesn't run, that'll be a huge lack. However, Jordan Bardella, he's very much trying to come out of her shadow, as it were, show that he can stand on his own 2 feet. The National Rally has been saying that there is no light between them. They are marching in lockstep together. The core tenets of National Rally politics, very much together, that French national identity, anti-immigration platform. But we are starting to see some differences. For example, Marine Le Pen, she's always been quite soft, for example, on the international stage, a little bit softer on Russia, more pro-Putin, as it were. We've seen her play up her relations in recent years. One of her previous campaigns, the money for that came from a Russian bank, you have to remember. Now, Bardella, on the other hand, he's been a lot firmer, a lot more firm on Ukraine, a lot more firm on NATO, and a lot more firm against Russia. So he's very much positioning himself to be able to stand there to move forward and to bring in the kind of support that the RN is going to need moving forward.
Luc Schrago, many thanks for that, setting the table for what may be nuances or differences within the party, again, that leads in the polls, the French far-right National Rally. Let's quickly go around the table. First question, Shannon Sebon, if you're a betting woman, do you see Marine Le Pen keeping her promise, not running, because she said wouldn't do it if she was wearing an electronic bracelet on the campaign trail, or this is her party, her family brand. She's the one who's got to run.
To be fully honest with you, I think it's really difficult to predict something. Honestly, at this time, I cannot tell whether she will be able to run, if she will take the decision internally. Because, of course, like the brand Le Pen is something that some of the people who are supporting the political party, the National Rally, for years are attached to. And on the other hand, some people do think that Jordan Bardella is a very promising figure and that he is also very popular when you look at the polls. But overall, what I will say is that I fully respect the decision of the court. And that's also my view as a politician. And I think that we should all respect the decision of the court because it's a fundamental principle of our democracy. Justice is the same for all. And I think it's also important to remind it at some point. On the other hand, what I do think is that this case also reveals the issue of the misappropriation of public money by the National Rally. That's an internal issue. And I don't want that French taxpayer, I do think that French taxpayers deserve better than this kind of misappropriation of public money. Because public money is our money at the end. And this political issue, which is a political issue according to me, also reveals the need to reinforce the trust between citizens, French citizens, and political parties. And there is also a question of integrity. It's not only about money, it's also a question of integrity. And before the next presidential election of 2027, I do think that all political parties should have their own internal study of how they work internally, and we should all be taken as responsible about what's going on in our political party.
Yves Saint-Omer, how many of the French think today, after this ruling, that this was a judicial decision following the texts and precepts of the law, and how many think that this was a political decision? Before the ruling, there was the Marine Le Pen supporters talked of a vendetta against her party. We know what her supporters think, but what about more broadly, the French population?
It is very difficult to say. I mean, we have no polls yet which could interpret the ruling of the court. I guess that the ruling was well balanced. On the one hand, the law was broken, and Marine Le Pen and the National Rally will have to reimburse and pay a fine. She's convicted, and it is normal. On the other hand, it means also that she will have the possibility to be a presidential candidate. And I think that for a large part of the citizenry in France, it means that it will be a politically open situation, not dictated by the judge. So
you're saying, in other words, Yves, you're saying, in other words, that it's better for democracy that she's able to run?
Yes, I do think so. I mean, we have to remember, she broke the law, but it was not personal enrichment. It was taking money from the National Rally, using it for the European Parliament, to the National Rally, using it, or the National Front at that time, using it in France. And it is different, for example, compared to Nicolas Sarkozy, who much probably had money coming from a foreign country to finance his electoral campaign. So it's normal that she was convicted, but it's also normal that at the end of the day, French citizens will decide whether she could be elected or not.
Victor Mallet, after those months and months of following the National Rally, do you believe Marine Le Pen would step aside if she has even the slightest possibility of being able to throw her hat in the ring?
That's certainly the impression we were getting until about 4 hours ago. Yes, I mean, yesterday and over the weekend, you had all these senior politicians, including Bardella, paying tribute paying homage to Marine Le Pen as though she was about to leave, as though she was abandoning her ambitions. And that's certainly the kind of base case, I think. She herself has said if she has to wear an electronic bracelet under a form of house arrest, she will not campaign. And I suppose, we should take her at her word. However, the fact that the sentence of house arrest, electronic bracelet was reduced to the bit that was not suspended was reduced to 1 year. That is quite interesting because it definitely makes it, a little bit more likely that she would consider standing, I think. But on the whole, the sort of the mood in the RN in the months and weeks and days leading up to this was very much that it's all over for her, and Bardella will be the candidate. So unless she really has quite a dramatic change of heart after hearing the verdict, I think we are going to see Bardella as the candidate.
You think we're going to see Bardella? So we have some disagreement among some in the newsroom who think it'll be Le Pen.
We'll find out in about...
Well, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, we'll find out in about an hour, won't we?
Exactly. Victor, let's listen to the pair of them. Marine Le Pen, she anointed Jordan Bardella as president of the party on the eve of his 25th birthday. Some at the time called him a Manchurian candidate under her control. Now this question over whether the party can thrive if the name at the top of the ticket is not a Le Pen. This is a sample of the vibe, if you will, at a rally in the northern town of Liévin last Saturday.
Marine will run for president, and if she's elected, Jordan will be prime minister. But if, my friends, if the court prevents me from running for president, then I too will, with great determination, strong conviction, and great confidence, of course, support Jordan Bardella's candidacy every day, right up until his victory.
I want to thank Marine for her friendship, for her trust, and for her loyalty. I want to reaffirm my complete support and my unwavering friendship. I want to tell her again that I entered politics for her, to help elect her president of the Republic. And I very much hope that in a few months' time, I will have helped her get elected president.
Sorry to bore you with the legalese, Shirley, but there's been a report just come through on the wires. Next week is when the Prosecutor General says we'll know whether or not there's going to be this final appeal process in France where you can do procedure. It's called the Cour de Cassation.
So that's when perhaps the Le Pen or the prosecution will try and get this to the end, perhaps. We'll see that. But I can't imagine that after such a sentence, which is relatively light considering what was expected, everyone was saying that she'll get as much as in the first run. It's difficult to imagine that she'll bring this to the top court, that she will question this and will appeal this again. Perhaps the prosecution, I don't know. I have to bring certain points. For example, we talked about why her sentence was lighter. Well, you have to take into consideration the change of attitude also on her behalf, because in the first trial, she said that this was some kind of political maneuver, that she has done nothing wrong, although the proof was there. And now in the second trial, she completely changed her attitude and admitted that what they did was actually against the law, against the regulations, and the fact that she's more humble and admits some wrongdoing, although not completely, well, that's part also of the decision made by the court. And also, I think that if she doesn't run, although the court does not stop her from running, the sentence does not stop her from running, well, her supporters will be extremely disappointed by this decision, I believe. I mean, I talked to many people yesterday saying that, yes, Jordan Bardella is popular in polls, but will he hold for a whole year? He's not that experienced. Isn't that kind of that's taking a risk on the part of the party if they don't take Marine Le Pen, if they can have her, since now it's possible. So that's a decision. We also asked the question to Valorant Saint-Just, who is one of the people who were also condemned today.
One of her co-defendants, yeah.
Yes, and a journalist asked him, she said she will not run, she will not campaign with an electronic bracelet with this tagging. And he said, that doesn't mean anything. She is the one. Marine Le Pen will decide. It's her decision. And he still said that the National Rally has two natural candidates, Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella.
All right, this issue of whether or not it's a fair ruling, and you mentioned the different tack during the appeals trial. Another high-profile figure who's appealed his conviction is France's former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, who served 4 weeks in prison over the Libyan financing of his 2007 campaign before he was allowed home due to his age, above 70. 4 weeks that in jail, though, allowed him enough time to write a book denouncing his conviction as a political vendetta. He wrote a book while in prison. Do you see Shannon Sebon, Nicolas Sarkozy, at his appeals trial in October, taking a milder tack with the judges?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, it's always difficult when you are involved into politics to comment such decision of like the court. I mean, it's really difficult. And my mission on a daily basis is not to lose time at some point, if I may, to discuss and to comment on these political issues and on this like judicial issues. My main interest is also to look at the future. And what I see on a daily basis is how I can solve French citizens' problems. And what I can tell you is that whether it is Jordan Bardella or whether it is like Marine Le Pen, the issue is the same. Behind this is a national rally. And I don't see right now, correct me if I'm wrong, a consistent and a clear line on some topics, whether it is on energy, on economy, on welfare, on immigration, even on Europe. Even in Europe, they have changed their mind 10 times.
Yeah.
So what I think, what should be
but when
the
I'm talking
most
about this issue, I'm
important
talking,
to
Shannon,
us-
about this issue of faith in institutions, and that's what you were talking about earlier. I want to bring in for this Victor Mallet, because we've had across the channel, Victor, the head of the far-right party there today announced that he's stepping down from his seat, not because he's done anything wrong, he claims, Nigel Farage, but rather he wants a by-election, and he'll let, quote, the people decide, not the judges, whether or not he's innocent or guilty. So again, there's this attacking of the institutions that's happening, it seems, everywhere.
Yeah, he's very much attacking the institutions. I mean, interestingly, in France, the French people actually didn't really take the bait and join Marine Le Pen and Bardella after the result of the first trial, when they said this is an outrageous abuse, and Donald Trump weighed in from America saying, you know, Marine Le Pen is innocent and so on. But actually, most French people, including supporters of the Rassemblement National, the party, you know, they did not really buy this argument, because I think, as some of your other contributors have been saying, several other parties have been targeted by similar investigations, including Jean-Luc Mélenchon of the far left, La France Insoumise, and including Bayrou, the former prime minister, the centrist former prime minister of Macron. So this is not an exceptional targeting of the far right, which is the way it was initially framed by Le Pen and Bardella. So I think actually people do have a kind of faith in the institutions. There is a slight question about the way that they initially imposed this, they disqualified her from standing for election, even though for 5 years, even though she was appealing against the judgment and so on. And then I think everybody knew, and this is where, one might say it's a little bit political, everybody knew, or everyone suspected, that the appeal court would say, actually, we're going to get rid of that obstacle, because otherwise it looks as though the justice system is preventing the leading candidate from standing for election. So they kind of got around that by giving a suspended disqualification from standing for election, which I think, as your first contributor said, basically expires around now, so she can now technically stand. And so the question now is really about whether she wants to do it with the electronic bracelet and the house arrest constraints that would apply to her.
Which brings us to the second point that Shannon Sebon was making, which is about what is Marine Le Pen all about. She's been in the public eye ever since she appeared behind her father, who'd upset the incumbent socialist prime minister in 2002 to qualify for the runoff of a presidential election won by Jacques Chirac. Later, Marine Le Pen pushed out her father, made the ex-communist industrial Rust Belt North her political fiefdom, and then ran for president 3 times. She lost all 3, true, but she's also, Yves Saint-Omer, gone up in the polls each time. So the question is, you know, again, we're a long way out from the official campaign period, but the far right, does it do better or worse when Marine Le Pen is top of the ticket?
I mean, Marine Le Pen and the National Rally are a success story, but a story which is not finished. And the decisive, crucial judgment will be done after the next presidential elections. Will she be able to enlarge again electorate and win the presidential election if she runs or not? And there you have a question of ego. I mean, it's there is pro and contra for her. To be, again, the presidential candidate is something important, but if she loses, then she will be over. If Bardella is a candidate, she has more margin of action afterwards. So it's very difficult to say. It's also very difficult to say what the National Rally will do once in power. It's quite clear that it will be a non-illiberal policy, but to what extent? Will it be radical, very radical or not? It's difficult to say. It depends also on the results of the legislative elections. We will happen a month or 6 weeks before, after the presidential elections. So there are a lot of uncertainties. And it's true that Marine Le Pen has changed her mind on a lot of issues, but this is also true for most of the political parties in France at the time being. She is probably more consistent than others. She does represent a danger for the democratic order in France and for Europe. But a lot of people are so obsessed with the political system at the time being that, I mean, she has gained credibility in the last couple of years.
She's gained credibility how much? Shannon Sabon, in neighboring Italy, where they have to govern in coalitions, Giorgia Meloni becomes prime minister from the far right, but she's gradually done kind of a takeover of Silvio Berlusconi's old traditional conservative party. Yeah. And now when she shows up at a NATO summit like the one taking place, she's almost considered a mainstream European leader. Do you see that happening?
Definitely.
If Marine Le Pen or Jordan Bardella becomes president?
Definitely, because what we can say about the National Rally, and I'm speaking here as a citizen, is that they manage also to kind of clean the story of the party. They are not seen anymore as a far-right political party in France. Many people consider even as they are being like a political party of the center-right, because they have decided to take like strong stance even on the topic of anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? And that's part of a global strategy of dédiabolisation, as we say it in French, you know what I mean? So definitely, and I think that they managed to clean all of this, even if we should also keep in mind the fact that during the last parliament election in 2024, you do have more than 100 of candidates that were running for the French parliament that did have some videos that were like spread over their social media and such with Nazi symbols, racist speeches and such. So it's not all cleaned for now, but they have managed, according to me, their strategy of dédiabolisation. And I think that this issue right now, what's happening, it's kind of not dramatic for Marine Le Pen and her political party, but it's not like easy for her because she has like a playground behind her and in front of her in order, to move forward. So I think it's kind of a tricky situation. And my view is that she also realized that. That's why she also tried to make Jordan Bardella becoming a more important figure within the internal kind of organization of the political party. And I can see it right now. Jordan Bardella is very popular among the people who are supporting the National Rally for a while. So, I mean, the next presidential election will be particularly interesting on this. And I mean, I'm a member of Les Républicains, so my political stance is as a member of the center-right. But honestly, with all the respect that I have for the people who decide to vote for Marine Le Pen and for Jordan Bardella or for all the National Rally members, is that they are like lacking of consistency. And I'm telling this because I'm 30 years old, and I don't think that you can manage the seventh economy in the world when you are 30 years old. And I don't think that Jordan Bardella could be the right solution for France right now in 2027.
Let's talk about Jordan Bardella, raised by a single mother in a working-class northern suburb of Paris. Certainly drew attention back in April when the world discovered his new significant other was the blue-blooded Maria Carolina de Bourbon des Deux Sicile. The pictures in glossy celebrity magazine Paris Match drew some derision, it must be said. Shirley's recognized in one of those pictures one of the co-defendants of Marine Le Pen there behind them, who's the bodyguard. The pair later spotted in the paddocks at the Monaco Grand Prix Formula One race. The French word for bling, by the way, is bling bling, as you can see from that headline. Victor Mallet, having followed both Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella, is there a difference? Is he just her understudy?
Oh, I mean, there's a huge difference. Obviously, I mean, they do their best to say that they're on the same page, but you're already seeing quite big divergences in their policies. And you've already mentioned Ukraine, the difference in the approach to Russia and Ukraine, but there's also differences on the economy. You can see Jordan Bardella is much more open to big business, to entrepreneurs, to the idea that big companies should not be taxed out of existence. Marine Le Pen maintains a much more socialist style attitude towards the economy, an economy that would be dominated by the state and would preserve social security. There are other differences as well.
So hang on, are you suggesting, Victor, are you suggesting that Jordan Bardella is after the voters of Shannon Seban's Les Républicains party?
Oh, I'm absolutely suggesting that. Yes. In fact, I mean, Eric Ciotti already, was the leader of the LR, and he defected to Le Pen. So, with 16 members of parliament. So yes, that is another difference actually between Le Pen and Bardella. Bardella's much more open to the idea of making the RN a kind of, the umbrella organization for the right as a whole, because he knows that he needs people from the LR or natural LR voters, natural centre-right voters, to beef up the numbers in the second round. They cannot win the second round without winning some of those centre-right voters over. Marine Le Pen is much more cautious. He's much more purist about the party. But the thing I was going to say is that Bardella really represents the young. So for example, he's a little more environmental than she is, for example, even though they both take the line that the French people should not have to pay for adjusting to climate change and so on. But he's much more aware that this is a big issue for the future and it's something that has to be dealt with.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Isn't that difference? Isn't it possible that they're doing this actually strategy, that they're catering to different types of voters? That Marine Le Pen wants to keep her types of voters, and you talked about the Rust Belt in the north, and that Jordan Bardella wants to capture other voters so they can just, pass that glass ceiling that we saw in the past elections. Is that something that's deliberate between the both of them, or is it really a difference that will actually collide later on?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think it's deliberate because these kind of differences emerged very gradually. But there is an astonishing fact about the RN and Marine Le Pen and Bardella, which is that even though she might be excluded by this court case from being the presidential candidate, the party has another presidential candidate who is even more popular than she is, right at the top of the polling, who could stand for president. And no other political party in France, or indeed anywhere else in the world, has that kind of extraordinary advantage. And I mean, it's a credit to her political sense in a way that she chose a successor so early and kind of installed him and let him develop. You think of Nigel Farage. Imagine if Nigel Farage in the UK was felled by some scandal, which is not impossible at all, as you were mentioning at the beginning of the program. He doesn't have a mini Farage in waiting, who can take over. And the RN has this extraordinary advantage of a candidate who if Marine Le Pen does not stand, he can stand in her stead and is at the moment just as popular as she is.
Yves Saint-Omer, you agree?
Yes, I do. I mean, it's normal that in a party which more or less has 35% of the potential votes, you will have differences. And it's quite clear that Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella, both by their personality and what they stress, have differences. But it is also striking that these differences have not led to an opposition, to an internal struggle. When you look at the right, as a traditional right, when you look at the center, when you look at the Socialist Party, you have a lot of potential candidates which are fighting each other. Only the France Insoumise of Mélenchon is united, and at the time being, at least, the National Rally is united with two leading figures with nuance, but with still a large agreement on a lot of basic issues. So it's a very strong position, which means also that the risk of the National Rally coming to power is huge at the time being, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of months. But I don't think that the struggle will be open in the next couple of months before the presidential election.
There won't be an internecine struggle inside of the National Rally. Yeah, you make an important point, Yves. Whoever's top of the ticket, fact is the National Rally is already the largest party in the French Parliament. It was thwarted in the last legislative elections in 2024 by an 11th hour left-wing alliance between the two rounds of voting. Here's what the National Assembly looks like right now. As you were saying, there's a hard left candidate, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He's announced he's running. You've got the National Rally, which has one and possibly two candidates if needed. And in the middle, there's a whole host of candidates who are fighting one another. Is it early days, Shannon Seban, in that things will coalesce and there'll be fewer candidates come March 31st is the deadline for submitting candidacies? Or will there be more? And it will be this splintered scenario from the center left to the center right, which means you'll have radical left, radical right.
My feeling is that I'm not like a pessimistic person, but the fact is that when you look at candidates, it seems like, as you said it, the far left of Jean-Luc Mélenchon is very popular. That's why Jean-Luc Mélenchon is even like given 13% in the polls and such. And when you look at the far right, they are like 36% sometimes. So they are kind of united. My feeling is that when you look at the center, the left and the right, you have plenty of candidates. And I don't want to make a list right now, but I mean, we have plenty of candidates. Let's look at François Hollande, the former French president, who is also like starting to raise interest when you can look at the social media and such. Like, he is trying also to position himself as kind of the main figure in order to gather all the people who feel that they don't have a strong political figure from the socialists. Right now, you don't have a united figure when it comes to the socialists. And you do have a lot of French people who don't want to vote.
Neither from Emmanuel Macron's camp. There's at least two big names that are trying
Yeah, we have Edouard Philippe, and we also from
two former prime ministers who are trying to run.
And Gabriel Attal, absolutely.
It's fractured.
It's fractured, but what I do think is that there is right now a huge opportunity for the right, the real right, the right that I have decided to join after being plenty of years with President Macron, to restructure itself and to show that there is like unity. And I do think that I'm not convinced about the fact that we need to have this unity before the election. I do think that French people are clever enough and are mature enough in order to choose the candidate they would like to have at the end. So to me is that the unity should be held in the polls and when people would like to vote, not before. You know what I mean? That's my position.
Victor Mallet, in researching your book, what did you explain? Did you grapple with the fact that France, a country which has had people vote for hardline parties, there were right after World War II, there was a quarter of the population that voted communist. There has been, but there's never been this kind of support for the far right. Did you find a reason as to why?
Yeah, I mean, I think France is like other countries in the sense that, of course, it has its own particular, political system and social traditions and so on. But there is this incredible anger around the world. You see it in the United States, you see it in Britain, against the establishment. And when you go out there and talk to ordinary voters, especially outside Paris, people are fed up. It's what led to the kind of Gilets jaunes uprising. They're fed up with the government. In this case, it's the government of Emmanuel Macron, or the governments of Emmanuel Macron, and they just kind of want something different. And they're not always looking at the particular policies of the parties. It's very much a kind of gut feeling. I'm fed up with the status quo and I want something else. And that's a big advantage for the Rassemblement National at the moment, that kind of anger that is there. And it's not just in France. It really is a kind of global phenomenon, and that's why we saw Donald Trump elected. It's why we saw the British people voting for Brexit and still supporting a figure like Nigel Farage. And the fact that a lot of these, populist, nationalist, right-wing politicians don't really have much in the way of coherent economic policies, for example, doesn't seem to affect the voters. I mean, they don't seem to mind that much.
But let me ask you about this. Let me ask you about this, Victor, because when the French voted in 2017 for Emmanuel Macron, they voted for somebody who was a convinced pro-European candidate. And part of the reason they did so was they were spooked by what they saw with the leap of faith the British took with Brexit. Are the French conservative in the end? They're going to pick something, they're going to pick the devil they know rather than the devil they don't know?
Well, this goes back to what Shannon was saying, the LR was saying. I think the problem is that even if the French people are inclined to vote sensibly in the second round, where they would exclude somebody that they didn't like, so they would perhaps vote for someone like Edouard Philippe, there is a big danger with the French two-round system of elections that you could have a contest between Jean-Luc Mélenchon and Marine Le Pen or Jordan Bardella. And then, all those so-called sensible voters from the center will be left with a very awkward choice. Do I vote for the far left or do I vote for the far right? And I think in that case, Bardella or Le Pen would win easily, because I think most people on the center right would be much more willing to vote for Bardella than they would be to vote for Jean-Luc Mélenchon. So you have a sort of a built-in danger in the system. And don't forget that in 2017 and 2022, Jean-Luc Mélenchon came within a couple of percentage points of being in the second round. And in the event, he didn't. And in both elections, it was Macron versus Le Pen, but it could easily have been Mélenchon. And he rose really fast in the later days of the campaign in 2022.
All right, we'll see how 2027 plays out. Victor Mallet, thank you so much for being with us from London. I want to thank Yves Saint-Omer for being with us. Dole in eastern France. Shannon Sebon. Shirley Sitbon, thank you for being with us after a long day of covering courts here in the France 24 debate.